Joining us to talk more about this and what it means for the broader industry is Jager McConnell. He is the CEO of Crunchbase. Thank you for joining us today, Jager.
Happy to be here.
So Crunchbase, as you just heard, just declared, quote, historical data dead. So what led to this bold shift and why now?
Yeah, I mean, the trouble with AI is once it consumes your data, it has it forever. So if you deal in immutable facts, right, that never change, the last thing you want to do is just have your focus be historical data. So when AI started really taking off, we took a step back and said, what can Crunchbase do differently that no one else can do? What data do we have that no one else has access to? And by looking at our historical edit data, along with the usage of the 80 million people that use Crunchbase, we were able to realize that we could make predictions of the future using sort of the latest AI technology. And that's what we focus ourselves on.
And your AI claims up to 95% accuracy in predicting funding rounds, acquisitions, and IPOs. What powers this level of precision?
Yeah, it depends on which prediction we're talking about. So in the funding round example, we're looking at not just is it time for them to fundraise, which is what most people look at. We're also looking at things like what's investor traffic flow to the profile. Are the entrepreneurs going and updating their profile? Are they looking back at the investors? When you start looking at that data and sort of aggregate it and anonymize it, you start to get interesting trends and our accuracy predictions go through the roof, coupled with the 17 years of data, right? You have a lot of signal, a lot of data to work from the patterns, and then that usage data that no one else has allows us to do some pretty remarkable things on the prediction side.
And many investors have relied on historical data for years. How do you convince them now to trust AI-driven predictions instead?
It'll take time, honestly. When you think about what an investor is trying to do when they even come to Crunchbase historically, is they're going and trying to say, well, it's about time for them to fundraise. I have one data point or maybe a couple of data points. We have thousands of feature vectors on these companies, so we have a lot more data. So we'll always, I believe, do a better job predicting than an individual investor. So I think over time, they're going to test it. They're going to hopefully trust it eventually. And you'll see, like we're talking about the success stories, right? We predicted Hippocratic AI's funding around 4 months in advance. We predicted Kodo was going to get acquired 2 or 3 months in advance. So these sorts of anecdotal stories, hopefully we'll start to convince them. We'll give it a shot and sort of see if Crunchbase can do what they said they can do.
And what does this shift mean for venture capitalists, founders, and deal makers? How does it change the way they approach investments?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the deal that they're doing, right? You're going to see salespeople saying, hey, I'd like to engage with these companies in advance of a funding round rather than sort of that lagging indicator that they raised funding. Investors are going to find opportunities that they weren't even aware of, right? Like that's the advantage of Crunchbase with the funding predictions is I can go and say, tell me about the funding rounds that haven't reached out to me yet, right? So they can get themselves involved. So you're going to start seeing hopefully more competitive deals for those entrepreneurs. And then down the road, we're actually going to help entrepreneurs figure out who do we anticipate will be their next investor, so they can actually go and reach out to the best fits for them.
And speaking of best fits, Crunchbase integrates billions of market signals, right? So how do you ensure data quality and avoid biasness in AI-driven predictions?
Sure. I mean, we spend tens of millions of dollars a year trying to work on data quality. It's a never-ending challenge. It's hard to be perfect. But we have so many different ways of getting data in, and we've really refined that over the last decade of how to get that data. And then from the bias standpoint, we're always refining our models using back testing, right? So again, one of the advantages of Crunchbase is we have 17 years of data. It allows us to do this sort of analysis continuously and historically. So while, again, no prediction is going to be perfect, we think we're way better than what is available in the market.
And Jager, as we talk about how AI is rapidly transforming industries, how do you see Crunchbase evolving over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, the deeper we go here, the closer we get to public markets. So the better that we can do around predicting that next IPO, certainly, but also which public companies are going to acquire which private companies. How do market conditions in the public markets affect private markets? How do massive investments in the private markets start affecting public stock prices? So we're going to start talking about indices of public companies, private companies, and mapping them to public markets to sort of show how they're intertwined. So there's a lot of exciting there, that nexus between public and private.
And with this relaunch, what's the biggest competitive advantage Crunchbase is, now seeing in the market and over the other market intelligence platforms?
Yeah, I hinted at it earlier. No one else has 80 million people using their platform. And that usage data that no one else has access to is the differentiation, right? We're able to use that data to drive our predictions, coupled again with all that edit data, every single change that's ever happened on Crunchbase. No one else has. And that advantage, we think, is going to push us into this new future of a world where AI requires proprietary data to really be differentiated. And I think we have a really strong case there for our users.
Jager McConnell, Crunchbase CEO, thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Great to be here.